Om Sadashiva
Sadaşivasamaramdham
Sambaram Shankaracharya
Shankaracharyamatyamah
Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande
Paramparam
Guru
Guru
Paramparam
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau
Sahanavatu
Bhunaktu
Sahanavatu
Sahaviryam
Sahaviryam
Karvavahai
Karvavahai
Tejasvinavadhitamastu
Tejasvinavadhitamastu
Mahavidvishavahai
Vidvishavarai
Om Shanti
Om
Shanti
Shanti Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti.
Okay, so we had finished, I think, the 8th mantra of the second section. Today we'll go to the 9th mantra and we will chant. So please unmute yourself and chant. Agniryathayko bhuvanam pravishtaha
Agniryaiko bhuvanam pravishtaha
Rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva
Rupam
Rupam rupam
pratirupo
pratirupa
babhuva
Ekastatha sarvabhutantaratma
Tata
sarvabhutantaratma
sarvabhutantaratma
Rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa.
Rupam
Rupam
rupam pratirupa
bahishcha
bhavischa
Okay, so Ekaha, you have to break it up. Agnir Yatha Ekaha. So Ekaha Sarva Bhutantaratma. That is in the second line. Ekaha comes from the first line. Sarva Bhutantaratma comes from the second line. The one Atma, Sarva Bhutantaratma, which is the Atma of all living beings. What does it do? Pratirupa assumes various forms. So the verb assumes is not there, that we have to supply. Assumes various forms. Pratirupa, which is in accordance with, which is in keeping with Rupam Rupam, the form of every being. And Tatha Yatha, just as, to give you an example, Ekaha Agni, one fire principle, Bhuvanam Pravishtaha, which is in the universe. Pravishtaha here means which is already present. So already present in the universe. Babhuva assumes Pratirupa, various forms, Rupam Rupam, in keeping with the form of each object, Bahicha, Bahischa, Bahicha, which is outside also. So in simple English, the one Atma, which is the essence of all beings, which is there present in all beings, assumes various forms in keeping with the form of each living being, just as one fire principle, one fire element, Agni Tattvam, which is there in the universe, assumes various forms in keeping with various objects. And this is there outside also. Okay, so each word has to be explained. So he says the Jivatma, who is saying Yamaraj, the Jivatma, which is not different from the Paramatma, is the consciousness principle, the existence and consciousness principle, which is present in all living beings, and therefore also called the Ekatma. And what are the various aspects of this consciousness principle? One is Ekatma, it is only one. There is no other. It is Sarvagataha, it is all pervading. It is Akhandaha, it cannot be divided, indivisible. And to convey these features, he uses three examples. The first example is in this 9th mantra, the second example will be in the 10th mantra, and the third example will be in the 11th mantra. So in this mantra, mantra number 9, the example given is of Agni Tattva, the fire principle. In the 10th mantra, he gives the example of the Vayu Tattvam. And in the 11th mantra, he gives the example of the Surya Tattva. So he says here that even though Agni is one principle, and all pervading and indivisible. This is the very nature of Agni. That Agni, when perceived by us, don't you see it in different forms? You see it as if it is divided. So the fire principle in its original nature is the heat principle, and this Agni Tattvam or the heat principle itself is not manifest directly to our sense organs. You cannot directly feel the heat. For any experience of that heat, for the heat to manifest itself, it requires a medium. And when the appropriate medium is there, then that invisible fire principle becomes visible in the form of being experienceable. And this experience is not in one form. As many media as are available, if there is one medium, it is one form. If there are 10 mediums, there are 10 forms. And so he says, for example, when this fire principle enters, let us say, a wooden log, it seems to take on the shape of the logs. And so if you look in a fire and there are 25 logs there, each log will be glowing red hot. So the fire principle seems to have 25 forms. So as many as is the multiplicity of the medium, the media, that many forms this Ekaha Agni principle seems to have. And this flame cannot be cut. Similarly, the heat also cannot be cut. So it is Akhandaha, indivisible. And our consciousness is like that fire. And every physical body is the wooden log, the medium for manifestation. So you can think of our subtle bodies as the wick and the consciousness, the life, like the flame. As many subtle bodies are there, that many separate consciousnesses seem to exist. But as Vedantic students, it has been hammered into us that the multiplicity belongs not to the body, it belongs to the body, not to the fire principle. The multiplicity is in terms of number of logs or number of candles, but definitely not in terms of the number of fire principles. Because Ekah Agni, there is only one unmanifest fire principle, and he uses the word Bhuvanam Pravishtaha, has entered the world, has pervaded the world. In what form? Rupam Prati. Depending upon the number and the sizes and the shapes of the manifesting medium, Prati Rupa Babuva. That one Agni seems to have that many forms. And we must also say that since the Anatma, the forms, the reflecting media have a location, that reflected Agni, that manifested Agni also seems to have a location. So the form of the Agni and the location of the Agni, both of which are multiple. There is plurality belonging to the medium. That seems to have the form and the location of the medium. So that same Agni principle, when you look in a small candle, the flame appears small. When you look in a big candle, the flame appears big. When you look at the blazing forest fire, the flame appears huge. And when you look at the sun, that same principle is there in an infinite view. Tatha, in the same way, Ekaha, this one Atma, what does it do? Sarva Bhutantaraha. It pervades all beings. This is referring to his statement that Bhuvanam Pravishtaha, that one Agni is now found all over the world. Similarly, this Atma, Sarva Bhutantaram, is found all over the world in every living Jiva. And Pratirupo Babhuva, it seems to have taken on the form and the location of the manifesting medium, the body of the Jiva. Again, we have to remind ourselves, the plurality belongs to the medium. And as many media are there, as many different locations are there for that medium, this Atma seems to have that many quantity, seems to be in that many quantity and in that many locations. But really speaking, You cannot say the Atma is inside or outside. So he says Bahischa, Bahischa. Atma is both inside and outside. Now in his commentary, Shankara says that this mistake of attributing multiplicity to the Atma is committed not only by the normal lay persons, but also by philosophers. So Sankhya philosophy, or in fact Sankhya Yoga, they are taken together. Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya Darshanam and Yoga Darshanam. Nyaya Darshanam and Vishishta Dvaita Darshanam and Dvaita Darshanam. All these, they claim that Jivatmas are many. In all these Dvaita Darshanams, all these dualistic philosophies, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita itself, all of them say that Jivatmas are many, and they say there is one infinite Paramatma, and all the Jivatmas are pieces, are amsham of the Paramatma. So for them, there is a division of Jivatma and Paramatma, but for us, this Jivatma Paramatma division does not exist, because there is only one all-pervading, undivided, single Eka Atma. Question then comes, when scriptures say that you have to reach Bhagavan, what does it mean? You simply have to drop the misconception that I am different from Bhagavan. So in terms of the Tattva Bodha terminology, we are talking about RC and OC. There are multiple number of RCs and there is only one OC. And actually speaking, the RC is dependent upon the OC. So RC is Mithya, OC is Satyam. And how do I know when I use the word I in any discussion which I have? When I use the word I can be referring to either the RC or the OC, right? What is the indicator to tell me that the word I is referring to the RC? It's very simple. If when you say I, that I contains a reference to the gunas, the attributes of location, division, or limitation. Any location, any division, any limitation, then the reference is to RC alone. And that is why he says Bahishcha. While it may seem to be available as RC in the individual bodies, outside also it is available, but as what? As the OC. In the body, it is available as RC. And of course, it is available as OC also in the body. So that's the thing which we need to understand. Normally, we say RC is in the body and OC is outside. That is not true. Whenever you say RC is available in the body, remember that OC is also available in the body. What is the logic behind that statement?
RC can't be there if OC is not there.
RC cannot be there if OC is not there. Correct. In
The
other words, put it differently.
the pot and space example, the space which is inside the pot.
No, now we are talking about the reflection. When you use pot and space, you're talking about existence. There, Sat and Chit, you're talking about two different items. I mean, they are not different, but in terms of the discussion, RC means the Chit part, consciousness part. Your answer was correct, but you have to say that RC is definitely available. That is true, because there is a reflecting medium. OC is available for one very simple reason. What is that?
It is all pervading.
It is all pervading. OC is all pervading. It has to be available. All pervading means it's also available in the body. So that you must remember. Whenever you say RC, the RM of course is there. Without the RM, there is no RC. But OC is also there, not because of anything special, but because the OC is all pervading. And this is the critical difference when you use the example of the face in the mirror. Right? The face in the mirror is also a reflection. But what is the difference? In the mirror, your face image is available, the RC is available. But the original face is not available in the mirror. Why?
Because it's just a reflecting medium.
You have to connect to the last argument.
Because it's only one.
Because the face is not all pervading. OC is available everywhere because it is all pervading. Your face cannot be available in the mirror because your face does not pervade the mirror. Okay, that difference you have to clearly remember. Whenever an example is used, we must have a lot of clarity about the limitations of the example that we are using. Otherwise, we run into problems. Okay. Now we look at the 10th mantra, which talks about Vayu. So please unmute yourself. Vayuryathaiko bhuvanam pravishtaha. Rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva. Ekastatha sarvabhutantaratma. Rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa. Okay, so there is only one word different in this mantra and the earlier mantra. Earlier mantra, the first word was Agnir Yathaikaha. Here it is Vayur Yathaikaha. So the same example, same structure of the mantra, but it is referring to Vayu and not Vayu means the wind principle, and not the Agni principle. So the only difference is the word Agni has been replaced by the word Vayu, and the explanation is the same. The Vayu enters all the physical bodies. So when you say Vayu enters the physical body, what should you understand as enters as what? Sorry?
Prana.
Prana. So Pranamaya Kosha, basically we're talking about. Okay, so Pranamaya Kosha. And this Pranamaya Kosha takes on what shape? What is the shape of the Pranamaya Kosha?
The same shape of the physical body.
Same shape of the physical bodies. That you will remember, right? Whenever somebody says, what is the shape of the Pranamaya Kosha? Pranamaya Kosha is like water. I mean, if you have to take an example, the water which you pour into glass or a jug or a mug or a bottle, that water is all in different shapes. And the shapes depend upon the physical container. Therefore, the Pranamaya Kosha also takes the shape of the Annamaya Kosha. And therefore, since it has got shape, which is a limitation, it has got a division and it's got a location. You're seeing the flow? Therefore, Eka Sarva Bhutantaratma, that which is the Atma of all beings, Pratirupo Rupam Rupam Tatha Yatha Eka Havayuhu Pravishtham Bhuvanam Babhuvaha Pratirupo Rupam Rupam Mahischa. It is the same explanation. The Vayu is what Vayu is to be taken as Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha is there. And therefore, Sarvagata Vayu Tattvam is what? The Vayu which is entering your Kosha, yes, that is the Pranamaya Kosha. And the Vayu which is Sarvagataha, all pervading, what is the technical name for that? I keep saying, unless you have Tattva Bodha on the tip of your tongue,
Hiranyagarbha.
it is Hiranyagarbha, it is Samashti Pranaha. Therefore, the external Vayu Tattvam, which is Hiranyagarbha, that manifests in the individual as the Pranamaya Kosha. Right? So that also has a different technical name, Adhyatmika Vayuhu. A person, individual Vayuhu. And then, so that is the example. that the Vayu Tattvam, which is Hiranyagarbha, when it enters the physical body of a Jiva, it appears as a Pranamaya Kosha. And you have to, from there, go to Chaitanyam consciousness, take the same limitations. If consciousness is to be looked at as Anekam, multiple, Alpam, limited, and Sakhandam, that is subject to divisions, then that same all-pervading consciousness is now called Jivatma. So it is only a viewpoint. If I look at the same consciousness as Ekaha, Sarvagataha, Akhandaha. Ekaha means as one, Sarvagataha means all-pervading, Akhanda means indivisible. That same Chaitanyam is called Paramatma. But if I take the diametrically opposite qualities and say that the same consciousness, because of its reflection in a particular reflecting medium, is taken as multiple, Anekam, Alpam, limited, and not Akhandaha, Sakhandaha, subject to division, then it is called Jivatma. It is only a viewpoint. There is only one consciousness. From the point of having understood it properly, we give it the name Paramatma. When we misunderstand the nature of that consciousness, we call it Jivatma. This is the essence of this particular verse. And now we look at the 11th verse. We will chant. Please unmute yourself. Suryo yatha sarvalokasya chakshuhu
Suryo yatha
Sarvalokasya
sarvalokasya
na lipyate chakshushayir bahya doshaihi
nalipyate chakshusaihi
ekas tatha sarvabhutantaratma
ekastha sarvabhutantaratma
na lipyate loka dukkhena bahyaya.
nalipyate lokena bahya.
So bahyaya, being outside. Eka sarva bhutantaratma, that one single atma which is there in all beings, na lipyate, it is not affected, it is not touched by what? Lokha dukkhena, by the sorrows which exist in this world. Yatha tatha, just as Suryaha. So first is a statement that this all-pervading Atma, it is present in all living beings, and that Atma is not affected by the sorrows of the world, even though the world exists within that Atma, right? And he gives an example, how Yatha tatha, just as Suryaha, the sun, Sarva lokasya chakshuhu, which is the eye of the entire world. Sarva lokasya, of the entire universe, chakshuhu, eyes. So that sun, which are the eyes of the whole universe, na lipyate, is not affected by chakshushaihi, bahya doshaihi, by the external impurities. Bahya dosha means external impurities. Chakshushaihi, which are perceived by the eyes. So the eye of the world is not affected by any impurity which is perceived by the eyes. We need to explain that. Okay. So this example is the third one of the sunlight example. Now, please note carefully that we are not talking about Surya Mandalam. We are talking about Surya Prakasha. What is the difference?
Mandala
Like the-
is Golakam.
Yeah,
Tatha-
physical.
Surya Mandalam means the physical body of the sun. Physical sun, we are not talking about. We are talking about the sunlight. Okay. And there are 4 features of the sunlight which are pointed out in this mantra. There is Ekatvam. Ekatvam, non-duality of sunlight. Sarva Vyapitvam, all pervasive nature of sunlight. Akhandatvam, the indivisible nature of sunlight. And Asangatvam, not affected by anything. What does it mean, not affected by anything? The sunlight shines on the purest Ganga, which is flowing at Gangotri also, and the same sunlight illuminates the dirtiest waters of the dirtiest gutter of any big city. Okay, but in spite of the fact that it illuminates both, it remains uncontaminated. So one of the examples used to in Shastram to show that asangatvam, not being affected by the presence of, is sunlight. Light is not affected by any impurity which is revealed by it. Another famous example is there. What is that? What other thing is not affected by the presence of impurity?
Akasha.
Fire.
Atma.
Akasha. Space is not affected. Okay. So space and sunlight, they are taken to illustrate this asanga nature, the detached nature of not being affected by anything of the Atma. And he gives the example, Surya Yatha Sarvalokasya Chakshuhu. The sunlight is the eye of the world. Why does he say the sunlight is the eye of the world? Because forms and colors can be perceived by any living being in the world only when sunlight is available. Without eyes, without the eye which is without the sunlight, the forms and colors cannot be perceived. Right? Now, if you don't have eyes, a blind person cannot perceive form and color, and therefore this sunlight is taken as the eye of the world. Because any form and any color can be perceived only when that light is available. That is why the example. And apart from that, this sunlight is ekaha, it is one, it is sarvavyapi, all pervading, and it is akhandaha. Furthermore, na lipyate, it is not contaminated by any dirt, any impurities which exist in the external world, which it illuminates. Then chakshushai doshai. Okay, so that word requires explanation. And on the face of it, the literal meaning is only defects revealed by the eyes. Okay. So Shankara says that, Shankara's commentary, he gives a bit more details. He says that you should take it as antardoshaha. Antardosha, inner defects. And he explains that there are certain rules given by Veda about what should be looked at and what should not be looked at. So Vidhi Nisheda it is called. Vidhi is those rules which say you should do this, and Nisheda is those rules which say you should not be doing this. What are those rules? Vidhi is look and hear all that is auspicious, all that is mangalam, you can look and hear. And do not look at anything or hear anything that is amangala, that is inauspicious. So basically, Veda, there's a rule that if you talk ill of somebody, you will get papa. Right? That's one of the basics of Vedic conduct. Do not speak ill of anybody. If you cannot speak well, do not speak at all. And they say that if you speak ill of someone, you will get papa, you will get the demerit. And not only that, if you are speaking ill and your friend is hearing and enjoying that gossip, that hearing and enjoying also will get papa. Net to net, what are we saying? Veda says that your five indriyas should not be used for inappropriate purposes. They should be employed only for appropriate purposes. There is only one appropriate purpose in Veda. What is that? You should be studying, you should be reading about Brahman, you should be talking about Brahman. Brahman should dominate your life. That is the only appropriate purpose. So, technically, the Sanskrit words are Nisheda Darshanam, Nishiddha Sparshanam, Nishiddha Swadhanam. So, Swadhanam is also there. Swadhanam means tasting. So, Nisheda Darshanam, looking at, Nisheda Sparshanam, touching, Nisheda Swadhanam, tasting, and Shravanam, all those things are there. Anything which is prohibited is considered a papa. And these, therefore, wherever your pancha jnanendriyas are employed in a field which is a nishiddha field, which is prohibited by the Shastras, there is a particular type of papam attached to you, and this is called antara papam. Papam is generated by seeing or hearing the wrong things. It is antara papam. And when papam is generated by seeing the wrong thing, it is called chakshusha papam. That's what the word over here, chakshu. That chakshusha papam is when your eyes are inappropriately employed. And therefore, here the word, what does the verse say? The mantra says that the sunlight is not contaminated by this sort of chakshusha papam also, because though the human being, when he uses his eyes to see something inappropriate in terms of Shastra, he gets papam. The eye of the world, which sees everything, does not get this papam. In the same way, the Atma can never be contaminated by either Bahya dosha or Antara dosha. Any impurities outside or any impurities inside the body, this Atma can never be contaminated. Why? Because all transactions are only between Anatma and Anatma. A transaction generating Punya Papam, who are the two parties involved? One Anatma and another Anatma. Because we saw earlier, karma belongs only to Anatma and not to Atma at all. Therefore, is Tata Ekaha. This Atma is also one. Sarva Bhuta Antaraha, pervading all living beings. And then you can ask, if that Atma is pervading the Jiva, the physical body of the Jiva, the subtle body of the Jiva, how is it that Atma is not contaminated by the impurity belonging to the body of the Jiva? Because Atma is there juxtaposed. It's connected. It's got a sambandha with the body, right? So if you have a sambandha with the body, how is it that sambandha, that connection, does not pass on the impurity of the physical body to the Atma? That is a question which needs to be answered, which mantra, of course, does not talk about. So Shankara gives the answer. And by now, you're all advanced students. You should also know the answer. What is the answer? Come. There are at least 3 or 4 very advanced students in this class. What is the answer?
So Atma is Asanga.
Atma Asanga is okay. That's a statement. Why is it Asanga is the question.
Or Raviji, different order of reality. So Paramarthika and Vyavaharika cannot be connected with each other because they are not
Excellent.
at that level at all.
Shankara says the Atma cannot be contaminated because Atma and the bodies, they belong to different levels of reality. Atma belongs to a higher order of reality, while the body belongs to a lower order of reality called Vyavaharika Satyam. And Shankara in his commentary gives 4 examples. Of course, we are all familiar with them. One is Rajju Sarpaha, which is the snake rope example. One you may not have heard of too often, though it is there in Shastram, Shuktika Rajataha, which is basically means the shell and the silver shell. You know, like when you look under the water, sometimes you see a silver shell. And when you go close or when you pick up the shell only, you realize that there is really no silver on the shell. So that is called Shuktika Rajataha. And then the other example, which of course you are all familiar with, Ushara Udakaha. Ushara means desert. Udaka is the water, so the Mirage Water. And the 4th one, again, not very familiar with to most of you probably, Gaganeshu Malani, the sky and the dirt in the sky. So what is the effect of this? Raju Sarpaha means the snake is superimposed upon the rope. There is no real snake. And the rope is not affected by the snake because the rope belongs to Vyavaharika and the snake belongs to rope is Vyavaharika Satyam. Snake is
Pratibhasika.
Pratibhasit.
snake is
Pratibhasika.
Pratibhasika Satyam. Shuktika, the shell is Vyavaharika Satyam. Rajataha, the silver on the shell is Pratibhasika Satyam.
Right.
Usharaha, the desert is Vyavaharika Satyam. Udaka, the mirage water is Pratibhasika Satyam. Gaganeshu, the sky is Vyavaharika Satyam. The dirt in the sky is Pratibhasika Satyam.
Right.
Okay. So that is why these superimpositions do not really create a defect in the adhisthana, in the substratum. For the snake, the substratum is the rope. And the superimposition, the adhyastha rope, adhyastha snake, does not affect the rope at all. The snake does not contaminate the rope. Right? The rope remains as it is. Similarly, the silver does not contaminate the shell. The water does not contaminate the desert sand. And the dust in the sky does not contaminate the sky. Therefore, a connection between these two, between the adhishthanam, the substratum, and the adhyasam, that which is superimposed, there is no real connection at all. And that's the important point. There is no sambandha between the Rajju and the Sarpa. The sambandha is mithya. It is perceived to exist because of ajnanam. And because of the ajnanam, there are two different levels of reality. The rope is Vyavaharika. The snake is Pratibhasika. All because of adhyasa, the wrong perception. And therefore, the adhishthanam, the rope, appears to have a superimposed snake. The desert appears to have a water body on it. And therefore, Shankara says that these defects are not connected to the substratum at all. Why? Because they are two different levels of reality. When we apply this example to Paramatma and Jagat, there is one difference. What is that? What is the defect? What is the difference? One very crucial difference. Anybody?
In the order of reality, Paramatma is absolute order of reality.
Very good. When you apply this example to Jivatma and Paramatma, it is not Vyavaharika and Pratibhasikam anymore, which is what was the levels of reality in the examples, but it is Paramarthika and Vyavaharika. In the examples, the higher order of reality was Vyavaharikam, the lower order was Pratibhasikam. But in the Jivatma Paramatma example, Jivatma is Vyavaharikam, lower order of reality, and Paramatma is Paramarthikam, higher order of reality. Okay. So Shankara says Tatha. In the same manner, what happens? I, the Atma, I impose upon myself the whole universe, consisting of what? Kriya, Karaka, Phala. Kriya, the action, the Karaka, the instruments of action, and the Phalam, the whole world, I impose upon myself, I superimpose upon myself. And because of this experience of the world and its perception, because of the wrong notion that there is a world, all experiences, all sorrows, all dukkham associated with that superimposed entity. What is superimposed entity? The three bodies. And therefore, things like birth and death, which are associated with the three bodies, which are actually the superimposed entity. I am the Atma, remember. I am birthless, I am deathless. But because there is a close connection with the upadhis, and I have mistaken the upadhis as myself, I accept the limitations of the upadhis, the properties of the upadhis as myself. So one very important note arising out of this discussion is a mithya vastu by itself will never create a problem. Right? A mithya vastu by itself will never create a problem. What will create the problem?
Wrong perceptions, viewing it in the wrong manner.
So error will create the problem. Only when that mithya snake is mistaken to be the real snake, there will be a problem. And therefore, I should always remember, that is what the second line says, na lipyate loka dukkhena. I am not touched by any of the sorrows of this world. And kutaha, why am I not contaminated? Because I am outside. Well, that's what it means, bahya. Because I am of a higher order of reality. I am not vyavaharika satyam. I am outside the vyavaharika satyam. I am paramarthika satyam, like the rope and not the snake. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So we look at the last verse for today, verse number 12. Eko vashi sarva bhutantaratma.
Eko
Eko vasti
sarvabhutantaratma.
sarvabhutantaratma.
Ekam rupam bahudaya karoti.
Ekam
Tam
rupam
rupam bahudaya
karoti.
karoti.
Tamatmastham yenu pasyanti dhiraha.
Tamasmatsam yenu
Pasyanti
dhiraha.
dhiraha.
Tamatmastham yenu pasyanti dhiraha.
Tamatmastham yenu pasyanti dhiraha.
Tesham sukham shashvatam netaresham.
Tesham
Sukham shashvatam.
Okay. So ekaha, that one non-dual atma, which is sarva bhutanta atma, which is in the inner essence of all of us, is what vashi. Vashi means the one who controls. So is the controller of all living beings. And ekam rupam, though that atma has only one form, ekam rupam, it is actually formless, which is being called one form over here. What does it do? Yaha bahuda karoti. It as if it apparently transforms itself into many forms, into manifold forms. And dhiraha, the wise people, are those people, ye anupashyanti, who see tam atmastham, that atma, tam is that atma, atmastham, residing, dwelling in the bodies, and such a person, tesham shashvatam sukham, such a person enjoys lasting happiness. Shashvatam sukham means lasting happiness, eternal happiness. They enjoy eternal happiness. Na itaresham. Itaresham means others, not the others. Which others? The others who are unable to see that it is the one Atma who is really there in all the forms. There is no multiplicity of Atmas. There is only one Atma. Only forms and names are different. The one who sees that, he is the one who is free. Okay. So these two mantras, from mantra number 12 and mantra number 13, they are talking about the tatparyam of the Veda, the essential teaching of the Veda, which is Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. The oneness between Jivatma and Paramatma is the essential teaching of all Upanishads. And Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam means Jivatma and Paramatma are only two different names for the same entity, right? So why do we have different names? Because for the sake of communication, to be able to explain to the student, you need different names. So one can start with the Jivatma, and going through the process, you can end up with the Paramatma. Or you can do it in the reverse order. You can start with the Paramatma and end up with the Jivatma. Right? But remember that in Karma Kanda, in the Purva Veda, Karma Kanda part of the Vedas, Jivatma and Paramatma are treated as two independent beings. One is finite, one is infinite. The Jiva is the Bhakta and the Paramatma is the Lord, Ishvara. So in Veda Purva, remember it is Dvaita Bhakti alone. Why Dvaita Bhakti? Because Dvaita Bhakti alone can take you to Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, which is necessary for Chitta Shuddhi. But Dvaita Bhakti can only be a starting. It can never be the destination. Thus, Veda Purva talks about the difference between Jivatma and Paramatma for the purpose of generating Chitta Shuddhi in the sadhaka. And once Chitta Shuddhi has come, then the sadhaka moves away from the Karma Kanda, enters the Jnana Kanda, where the Upanishads talk about the fact that there is no difference at all. They talk about Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. To understand this, we can look at other examples. So, is the wave different from the ocean? Is one question we can ask ourselves. When you look superficially, they are different. The ocean is the karanam, the cause. The wave is the karyam, the product. The ocean is all pervading. The wave is finite. There is a sambandha between the two. The ocean is the creator. The wave is the created. When we inquire further into the ocean and the wave, what do we see? We come to the conclusion that the ocean is water, the wave is also water, and therefore the conclusion is there is wave ocean aikyam. There is identity between the wave and the ocean, and that can be reached by the understanding that there is really no such thing as an ocean or a wave. All that exists in reality is the water. So this water with Samashti Nama Rupa, universal name and form, is called ocean. And this water with Vyashti Nama Rupa, with individual name and form, is called the wave. Similarly, Vedanta says there is only one Atma, but because of ignorance, we superimpose the attributes of the Upadhi. The Samashki Nama Rupa attribute, when you superimpose, you call that Atma as Paramatma. The Vyashti Nama Rupa, when you superimpose, you call it as Jivatma. And when you call Jivatma and Paramatma, you call one as the creator and one as the created. You give it a Karana Karya Sambandha, relationship of cause and effect. And this is called Swami Dasa Bhava, the master and the slave relationship. Vedanta says, come out of that, come out of Swami Dasa Bhava. Dvaita Bhakti is necessary because it has to prepare the mind for Advaita. But Dvaita Bhakti will never give liberation by itself. So you can be in Dvaitam as long as you want to. If your mind is not prepared, there is no point at all coming to Advaitam, because it will give you more fear than otherwise. There are many students who come to Advaitam, to these classes, but they drop. They drop out of the class because they simply can't take what they are seeing. Their minds are not mature enough. But ultimately, you have to come to Advaita. You can postpone it even for 1,000 lifetimes, but you can never avoid it in the end. And here the first line of the sloka is talking about Paramatma. that Atma, which is the inner being of all being, inner controller of all, remains in one form and yet transforms itself into many forms. This is all the description of the Paramatma. And at the end of this teaching, one has to discover Aham Brahma Asmi. This is the real teaching of the Veda. That is the Paramatma Jivatma Aikyam. And where is that Atma available? In my mind. As what? As what we call the witness consciousness, the Sakshi Chaitanya, the RC. And the Upanishad says that you are that Sakshi. You have to claim yourself as the Paramatma. You will never find the Paramatma because you are the Paramatma. And what is the benefit of understanding this? You will get the highest Ananda, which is eternal Ananda. And claiming that Atma is also claiming Ananda. And to sum up, therefore, the understanding of Brahman is in 3 stages. First, the Dvaita view is there, that Ishvara creates the Jagat. Okay. When you say Ishvara creates the Jagat, we talked about various types of Karanam earlier also in many classes. So Ishvara creating Jagat is what Karanam? The Dvaita view. What Karanam is it?
Nimitta Karan.
Nimitta Karanam. Then that is the view of the Dvaitins. Then there is a Vishishta Advaitin view, that Ishvara transforms to become the universe. This is what Karanam?
Upadan.
More specific.
More specific.
Upadan is correct, but more specific. There are 2 types of Upadana Karanam.
Yes, yeah, I'm not getting it.
Parinami,
This is Parinami.
Vivarta, and
Parinami Upadana Karanam, because transformation is a Parinam. It's happening. And therefore, the Vishishta Advaitin says that the Dvaita view that Ishvara creates Jagat is not correct. It is Ishvara himself who becomes the Jagat. This is called Parinami Upadana Karanam. This is the Vishishta Advaita view. Right? We should note here that Brahman is not independent as far as Srishti is concerned. Wherever we talk about creation, there is a dependence of Brahman on Maya. But for its own existence, Brahman is not dependent on Maya. That is the difference. Like the gold can exist by itself, but to create the bangle, it depends on the name and the form. The name and the form is Maya over here. Similarly, Brahman is not dependent upon Maya as Brahman, but as Ishvara, the creator, Brahman depends upon Maya. So we saw 2 views, 2 stages. Dvaita is Nimitta Karanam. Vishishta Advaita is Parinami Upadana Karanam, which is Brahman becomes the universe. And the Advaita view is that Brahman does not create, Brahman does not become the universe also, Brahman appears as the universe. What is the difference between appearing and becoming?
There is no change.
Yeah, something changes in, like the example of milk and curd.
Yes.
There is a change in the form
So
of the
example of
substance.
milk becoming curd is Parinami Upadana Karanam. The example of something appearing as the universe is the Rajju Sarpa example. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Vivarta Upadana means that which does not change, but it appears as the universe. So this is the Advaita view. For a Karanam to be classified as Vivarta Upadanam, remember there must be no change in the Karanam. If there is a change in the Karanam, if it's a Upadana Karanam, if there is a change in the Karanam, it is Parinami Upadana Karanam. And Vivarta Upadana Karanam is the example is the snake appearing on the rope. As we saw earlier, the snake does not contaminate or affect the rope in any manner, there is no change in the rope. It only appears as a snake. Just like the desert sands appear to have mirage water without affecting the sand at all. And if that is so, there is one more basic corollary from this 1, 2, and 3 examples. In the first 2 examples, the nimitta karanam and parinami upadana karanam, remember that both the karanam and the karyam belong to one level of reality. In the vivarta upadana karanam, since the upadana karanam must not undergo any change, it must only appear as something else. That karanam, these two, here in the vivarta upadana karanam, the karanam and the karyam must belong to 2 different levels of reality. So with this, I'll stop. Vedanta is getting tougher, right?
Yes, sir. Lot of mananam.
Yeah, for understanding any Upanishad, it is necessary to come to class having read again and again and again. Otherwise, it's not like Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, you can enter the 5th chapter, 10th chapter, 15th chapter, almost independent, all of them. But here it is not. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we close for the day. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Acharya.
Om Om Om.